of Five on the Floor. We have a cast of characters that does not include Ethan Skolnick. I am your host, Greg Sylvander, but along with me, we have directly below me, Jonathan Ramlakan. We have live on set at FTX Arena, Brady Hawk, Alejandro Villegas on the ones and twos, Ricky J. Mark up top, and Timothy Bain coming from Nassau, I believe, right? You're not stateside at the moment. That's what's up. All right, y'all. Before we dive into this matchup, because boy, it came quickly. Here we are. Finally, game one is upon us. I want to tell you about a couple of the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network and this program in particular. The first is Biscayne Bay Brewing Company. So this craft beer, the Regatta Double IPA, the Tropical Bay IPA, Marlins Lager, all fan favorites. The Pale Ale is super popular. Hear people talk about that all the time. Make sure you ask for it by name. You can get it at FTX Arena. It's the official beer of the Miami Marlins, the official craft beer that I've heard and seen around FTX Arena, and the official beer of the Five Reasons Sports Network. So check out the Tropical Bay IPA. And Biscayne Bay Brewing Company. Check them out on their website, biscaynebaybrewing.com. And our second sponsor of the program is Mark Brown, none other than. So if you need somebody to help you with estate planning, whether you're single, whether you're married, you need to make sure you have a say in where your assets are going to go. So no matter where you are in life, this is something that you should have somebody that's experienced that can protect your best interests. So make sure you reach out to Mark Brown PA for a free case evaluation, 954-566-5678. Mark Brown, he has a small firm. They allow them to stay really focused on their clients. So they do a ton of real estate stuff. They work closely with their title company. So they're experts in handling property assets. Again, markbrownpa.com, 954-566-5678. Mention Five Reasons Sports. Mark will take extra special good care of you. He's probably a game one, honestly. Ethan tells me how big of a Heat fan he is. So thank you to our great sponsors. Now, the matchup is upon us. This is, I know the answer to this, but because we are going to remain informed, because you don't want to go into game one and start throwing out the playbook, Brady, who's in and who's out?
Yeah, it's everybody. And I don't think I've ever said that on this show until game one of the playoffs. It took 82 games, but everybody's a go. I think the question is who is actually going to be in terms of rotation. And I think it's going to be the regular starting five. I think it's obviously Tyler, Dedmon, Duncan, and I think Caleb is still that ninth guy. That I think he still is the X factor because they want to move some pieces around defensively to mess with Trae a little bit. So Caleb's probably going to get some time on Trae. I think Duncan has an opening in this series just with the drop coverage and possibly mirroring his minutes with Gorgie Jang just because of that deep drop. So there's going to be openings for some of these guys, and I don't see there being moments where maybe Gabe plugs in or other guys plug in. Maybe they go small with Markieff. There's different pieces they can play, but I think right now, I think it's those nine.
So I'm glad you touched on all the elements of the Heat because I think that there is discussion to be had about that nine. Does anyone just quickly, because I don't want to just let this team completely elude us. Anyone have the who's ins, who's outs for the Atlanta Hawks? Brady, you may have that information as well, but anyone on the panel can jump in with it.
So I know Lou Will has a bad back, so no Lou Will, and John Collins will play, and no Capella.
So no Capella, John Collins is in, and Lou Will is out. Okay, so they're pretty much, I mean, obviously the Capella thing is huge, but Collins being back is not something I expected. Timothy, I'm going to stay with you here. So this is an interesting matchup. I'm noticing that that Tyler Hero, he's showing no props on Prize Picks. Everybody, I would rush over to Prize Picks right now and use the code 5 to get your deposit doubled. But I don't see any Tyler Hero props up. Oh, finally it's up, 20.5 points. Timothy, talk to me about Tyler Hero's game today because he's somebody I'm specifically keyed in on. And would you go over under on 20.5 points for Tyler Hero in today's ball game?
Over for sure. I can't remember if it was, sorry, if it was Brady or Alex who said it, but their defense is horrendous. At least 25 points, at least.
I love the confidence there. Jonathan, the Trae Young conundrum. I think, that we've talked a lot. Brady has written extensively, and we've talked about it on 5 on the Floor, the ways that the Heat have so many different layers of defense and guys they can throw at him. Who do you expect to start out on Trae? Who do you expect to finish on Trae today?
I think you'd probably expect to see, with Kyle Lowry in the starting lineup, start out with Kyle on him. But I think really it's going to be a multiple of defensive schemes thrown at him. I think we might throw doubles at him, make the Atlanta Hawks think, make harder decisions, and not really just let him do what he wants. So I can see Miami throwing doubles at him. You mentioned Caleb Martin. I think that's going to be a big one. I think an interesting also is kind of Victor Oladipo. We might not really necessarily need him for his defense, but curious to see if he cracks the playoff rotation and maybe give us some defense as well. And I think Gabe Vincent is really one of those keys for this game because defensively, speed, he can match up, he can bother him full court, he can do a lot of different things. So I think Miami is not just going to throw one player at him. I think we're going to throw a lot of different schemes at him, doubles, traps. And I think, that's how we start off this game defensively.
So Ricky, I'm gonna lob these up to you with some good stats to back it up to start. So Miami's lost their last 5 playoff games. If you date back to the last one against LA and the 4 against Milwaukee, they've never lost 6 playoff games in a row. 5 losses in a row in the playoffs is the 3rd longest active streak in the league, behind Detroit at 14 and the Pacers at 9. Another thing that I think is interesting is the last 9 playoff games between the Heat and the Hawks have been decided by double digits. So that's an interesting wrinkle. Tell me why Heat fans, if Heat fans, and how Heat fans should be worried about today's matchup with the Atlanta Hawks in Game 1.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Happy Heat playoff Sunday, everybody. Look, this is the NBA playoffs, and everyone here is, well, not here, but like everyone that's going to be out there in a little under an hour, they're all professional athletes. This Hawks team can potentially beat you with their shooters. Gallo, the wannabe Tyler Hero, whose name I don't really care to remember this weekend, and Trae Young himself. I mean, there is something annoying about this team where on a given night, like what we saw against Cleveland the other day, they can come back from like a 17-point deficit or something to that effect and really muck things down and then close it out late in the end. This Miami team is known for struggling to put teams away when it absolutely has to. If I were to worry, it would be with that, because you don't want Trae Young to get into a rhythm. And if he starts dancing, it's curtains. Y'all give me grief for being a Knicks fan. I saw it in 5 games last year, okay, especially at the Garden. That is something that, as a Heat fan, I would be concerned about. However, that said, I'll give you another flashback in terms of dealing with a talented star guard who also played for the Knicks. And then I think it was 2011, 2012, Jeremy Lin, who was basically the only good guy on that team for that pocket of time, came to Miami and got his lunch taken. Miami, I imagine, will have a similar or comparable defensive approach to the way he plays, because a lot of those other guys, they rely off of they rely on what he does. And John Collins is his first game since, I think, March 11. So while I think Miami has good reason to be respectful and concerned about what this Hawks team could potentially do, I think it's something that at the end of the day, if Miami does what it's supposed to do, it should be a relatively short, though competitive series.
I'm with you on the competitive part. I think it'll likely, just because of the offensive stuff, like all they need to do is get hot. Brady, I'm coming back to you on this because on 5 on the Floor, we talked a lot about the perimeter guys being a focus in this series. We've talked about the drop killers that Miami has and just some of the stuff that they can do to exploit Atlanta. John Collins is back. I have an interesting stat nugget to throw out there. Thank you, Yahoo, for these stats. Shout out. Bam Adebayo is one of 2 players in NBA history to average 8 rebounds and 3.5 assists while shooting 55% from the field in his first 300 games. So that's pretty big. Only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has those obscure stats that they're pulling out of nowhere. What can we expect? We've talked about the wings, Brady. So let's go to the bigs. Talk to me about Bam Adebayo. What should we expect from him today and throughout this series? And does John Collins change the equation, the math, in any way?
Yeah, I think first things have opened up on the inside, obviously, without Capella. They have to face, I guess, Bam Light, who they tried to compare him to coming out of the draft. So it's funny seeing him match up But the thing I think it changes the most is, for one, I think we know that Bam has to be a force inside. Like, this isn't one of those matchups where you're going to want to see a bunch of mid-range pull-ups, even though it could be there in the drop at times. You want to see him attacking. Like, you want to see him in the post, kind of driving baseline, getting in those spots. But I think the biggest thing with the John Collins factor is he's a weak side defender, where guys like Jimmy, guys like Tyler, when they're attacking, he's going to be pulling all the way over to try to just cut them off, tag, try to stop them, double. This series is going to come down to corner shooters. And I know I'm getting back to perimeter stuff, even though you asked me to get to the bigs, but it ties into the John Collins thing, because I feel like they're going to be so worried about the drives that PJ Tuckers, the Max Struces, the Duncan Robinsons, they're going to have to hit that catch and shoot corner three if they want to exploit them offensively the way they want to. But I think the way that you also get around that is if Bam sets the tone early in this series and he's a force inside, you can't fully just leave guys and double out when you want to. So it's just, the key is the shooters, as we know, because this Atlanta defense is just really bad on the perimeter with rotations. But Bam would be kind of the tone setter. And I think it's Bam. I think even more so it's Jimmy, because he can be the one to get the mismatches onto him. He can be the one that can get Trae on him, get these other guys. Tyler can get, a guy like Gallinari on him in space. Bam is the same way, but it's just the question is, will he do it? Will they worry about that early on? And I think more of that will kind of be like a game 2, game 3 kind of adjustment.
Yeah, as long as the threes are falling, Bam has relatively short work ahead of him. All right, we're going to go around. I'm going to ask a couple things of you guys as we go around and get our picks and close up shop. I think Alejandro has some other stuff planned for the programming. Want to also call out on Prize Picks, where you use the code 5 FIVE. They have Jimmy at 0.5 3-point shots made today. I would go over. I think Jimmy's going to sink one. But I'd like to go around, get your guys' predictions for today. Any other comments you guys have if I didn't have the opportunity to get to you, but also I'm interested to hear from each of you, the player off the bench for Miami that comes up biggest today is, and we start with Timothy.
So first of all, I'm just so happy that this finals run will be blessed by the Bahamas vacation that I took last week. I'm mad bound didn't get to come. I was almost this close to going to go check out the guys, but they decided to come back a day early. So there I was going. They're already back at Miami, but that's good. That's good. I think Caleb will make Trae's life a living hell today. For one, I think the Heat will win today, 8 to 10 points. I have Heat in 5. Like I said earlier, this defense is abysmal. So I look for Duncan to not have any type of rest this series. Sorry, and I saw and I put in the chat. The Heat and the Hawks are 1 and 2 in 3-point. This is going to be a shootout, like an old fashioned Southeast shootout. So I'm looking forward to the series. Like I said, it's going to be short but competitive. But yeah, the Heat have about 4 to 5 guys that they could throw on. Onto Trae Young. So between even if Depot and Gabe aren't in the 9-man rotation, they are there waiting to just basically attack Trae. So like with 6 fouls, with aggression. So like I'm very confident in the Heat in this series.
It's a really good point. Both of those guys are ball hawks just waiting for minutes. That's a great call. Jonathan, you think the common theme will be 3-point shooting between these two teams that do, rank at tops of the league and just all the other stuff? I'm not, I right now, lately, I've been this host who throws 4 questions at you at once. It's playoff time. So y'all got to be able to handle this stuff. All the balls are in the air. Jonathan, hit me with your answers.
Yeah, I think that 3-point shot is going to be contingent on this series, right? Miami's defense of the 3-point shot and us hitting the 3-point shot. Sometimes we haven't been too consistent, although it seems, even though we're still one of the best in the league at it. But I think that's going to be a big part of it. When it comes down to this series overall, though, I know, Greg, you're a big guy on checking the game notes. Something that we got to let's take a look at. We got 3 players from the last 3 championship teams, right? We have Kyle Lowry, got Keith, and then we have PJ Tucker. So that's going to be big and instrumental when it comes down to making mid-game adjustments, making sure that our emotions don't get too high or too low for anybody on the team. That's going to be a big, good calming presence. A couple guys that we're going to want to keep our eyes on are the last 2 weeks. Gallinari, 46% from deep. Bogey 49 or 48% from deep, and Huerter 46% from deep. So that's the last 2 weeks. Those are some guys that have been heating up pretty well. So we're going to want to make sure that we keep their shooters uncomfortable. And I think it's going to start with making Trae have to make a lot of decisions and make him work through a lot of defense to kind of get the offense going. I think the Heat win today, and I think we pull it off by double digits. I think Jimmy Butler gets double digits in the free throw line. He abuses their defense, and we get it done.
So I agree with all that. And the one thing though is that those 3-point percentages, I don't love that part of it. I think Bogdanovich in particular, although he has not shot well in certain matchups against Miami, will have his opportunities this series. And Kevin Huerter, as Ricky did not want to mention earlier, we're not going to talk about him too much because I have a feeling Heat fans are not going to like him by the end of this. Ricky, I was coming to you, but I know Brady has to likely wrap and move from that spot. So Brady, let's get your picks and your player off the bench today to watch.
Yeah, let's say about those shooters. The question is, you kind of have to pick your poison with Trae Young, either as the scorer or the passer. Like, you have to either say, we're going to full out on Trae Young, and we're going to kind of maybe open up some shooters in that way. Or you say, we're staying home on shooters, and we're going to put two guys in an action and pretty much just stay with that. I think that's their plan early. Like, I feel like they're going to stay home on shooters. They're not going to let these guys get going. They're going to do the thing probably early where they put PJ and Bam in the action. Bam's going to see a lot of time on Trae. You guys mentioned all the other guys that'll open that up. I think the watch for the Kyle Lowry on Gallinari thing, because those stretch forwards that aren't interior guys, they love planning a guy like Kyle on them to kind of put more length on a guard. The player off the bench, I think this is a Caleb and a Duncan, but I will say, because Caleb is defensively, we've talked about that, this feels like a Duncan game to me. Like, I feel like after all the things he's kind of been through this season, the Gorgie Jang thing, however you say his name, is the thing to watch. Like, it just, the deep drop coming off a curl, all you need is one good screen to get him open. And it just comes down to him hitting that shot off the curl. I think he probably hits 4 threes off the bench tonight. And I think he's going to come up big in this one. I feel like I think they win around 8-10. But I will say another thing. We always talk about late game offense, and that's kind of the worry. This is one of the big matchups where I say I am not worried about late game offense against this team. If this is a close game, they have things to get to. And we saw that the other night. We saw the things they could get to. They could space you out. You can, for one, hunt Trae, or you could put him in. What they like to do is they put Trae on that corner guy, just trying to get him away so they can't hunt him. And then you have no weak side defenders. So they have outlets to get to against this team late in the game. So I think that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Ricky, how you feeling?
I feel pretty good. Thankfully, this Miami Heat team won't rely on a Finnish power forward to not call a timeout when he probably should have after a turnover. So they've got that going for them. I heard Jimmy Butler's name for the first time, I think, thus far today. I really hope he doesn't shoot threes because we have shooters. I think in terms of the potential standout performance, I'm going to give a shout out to Michael Christian, Depot. I think Depot is going to be a problem for someone, especially defensively. I think we might actually need that today. I think Spo might actually throw him out there at some point, perhaps in the first quarter, if, God forbid, something is going on where they're getting real comfortable shooting and making these shots. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because it's Pesach or Easter or even Ramadan, but the spirit is telling me this Heat team is going to handle their business in this series. I think it's going to be like I said before, a competitive 5-game series, Heat in 5, maybe 6 if they play with their food. But if they play with their food too much, I'm not, it could be that other number. Ultimately, I think Miami's going to do just fine, provided that PJ Tucker stays healthy. And potentially wins us a game in this series, like I had been saying a little earlier this season. Jimmy plays his game and not the game he thinks he should play. He is not Carmelo Anthony in his prime. Stop shooting them threes and do your job. Do the job that got you to the finals 2 years ago that Heat fans love talking about. I think, like I said, they're going to be just fine. We'll see what happens. Roll the ball out. It's playoff time. This is what we were waiting for. This is what this team was assembled for. Not all that regular season storyline nonsense. Here it is. Now the league can't avoid talking about the Miami Heat. They are the number 1 seed. One last thing. I just saw on NBA TV. Are the Heat vulnerable as the number 1? Heat fans, look, now it's time. Okay? It's not that they're being unreasonable in asking that question, but now it's time for your team to answer that question and say, we deserve to be number 1. We've been the most steady team, and we were rewarded for it with the 6th man of the year, and the coach of the year, and the defensive player of the year in Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and Eric Spoelstra. Heat in 5.
Ricky J. Mark is in playoff form, y'all. So
Always.
that was, I'm on board with all of that. No excuses, right, y'all? Like, that's
None.
where we're at now. Like, we have arrived at the point of the season, and it's fun to like all of the talk all of the tweets, all of the subtweets, all of the memes, all of that shit goes out the window because it is time for Put Up or Shut Up. Alejandro, we haven't heard from you yet. How are you feeling on this beautiful Sunday about this Miami Heat matchup?
I'm feeling great, guys. I think they're gonna win. I think they're gonna sweep this series. None of that Heat in 5, but we'll see what happens. I mean, these Atlanta Hawks had a great run last season. I know their team is not fully healthy, so that's gonna be a factor there. But I'm confident in this Miami Heat team.
To all of our, thank you, Alejandro. See, it's unanimous, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Ethan's not on the show, so we don't got no jinx energy going.
Ooh, but he's at the arena, right?
Not quite yet.
We got Brady there. We got Brady there. Don't
We
worry.
have Brady there to offset that. Alex offsets it even more, and I'm vicariously there through those guys. So that's what's up. To all of our viewers, smash the comments. What do you think is going to happen in this series? Heat in 4, Heat in 5. Let us know. We're interested to see. Hey, Heat in 3, I see getting thrown up there. That's what's up, Edward, Brian, and I can't see the other. There was somebody else, but it's now scrolling too quickly. So just to tie a bow on this one and send you guys off, I think this could be a big Duncan Robinson game. The only way it won't be is if Max Strus is unconscious instead and they just stick with him. I expect Tyler to have a big one, Jimmy to have a big one. I don't think they're going to need big scoring from Bam. To everyone's point, I think this is a 3-point shooting series. I was going Heat in 5. That's what I've been talking about on 5 on the floor all week. Sweet. Let them bring the brooms out. We're going to bring the brooms out in ATL and hopefully get this done. But before we can even do that, we got to win game 1, y'all. So let's just get this one. I don't know what the stats are, but it used to be like 86% of game 1 winners went on to win the series. I'm sure that stat's out there somewhere. Send it to me if you can find it. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our panel of hosts and co-hosts. Ethan will hopefully be back for programming throughout the rest of the day. We will have a 5 on the floor post game. We will have you covered from the media rooms with 3 people on site there. Post up 5 R's going live after the game on 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Alejandro will have a lot of fun stuff happening on the channel here, hangout, etc. So we got you covered. 5 Reasons Sports. This is your spot for the entire playoff run. And as we end the show, because Ethan will never do so, let's go Heat.
Make sure to like and subscribe, everybody.
There you go. Thank you, teammate. Like our friends say here, and also Jonathan, like and subscribe, please, for all of you that are just getting here, getting to know the 5 Reasons crew, please, and the channel, please like and subscribe. We are also, I want to invite you guys, we're going to be doing a hangout, a live hangout here during the game. So if you want to watch it with us, leave your comments and we can be talking during the game here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. It's not going to be this same broadcast. It's going to be a separate one. But just so you guys know, I mean, the game is supposed to be starting, in 35 minutes. So we're going to have that rolling. But before, don't leave, because we have a special edition of 5 on the Floor talking about this particular matchup between the Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks. So give me a second here, because I'm going to play that podcast for you guys as we get ready for today's game. The Miami Heat facing the Atlanta Hawks to open up their, hopefully what it should be, a championship run this year in the playoffs. So here we go.
Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're also on Dash Radio every single weeknight on their Nothing But Net channel at 7 p.m. Also, 5 Reasons YouTube. Make sure you like, but especially make sure you subscribe. We have content on all the South Florida sports, especially the Heat, all day long, okay? And we got Before Floor, an hour before every Heat game. That continues during the playoffs. And also, we've got Post Up 5R hosted by Royal Shepherd as soon as the game ends. 5reasonsports.com, spell that one out. That's no paywall content on a website. That's not something that the newspapers do. And check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a product code. We tell you about it all the time. It's 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. It gets you 25% off at therapistpreferred.com. That's premium CBD, the tincture, the sports cream, the gummies, different flavored gummies. Again, you're not going to fail a drug test with this stuff. It just helps you sleep. It helps you recover. We know people who are swearing swearing by it now. I'm one of those. Also, for all of your grooming products, especially below the belt, manscaped.com, you get 20% off with the code 5RSN. And in addition to the razors, you can get the cologne. They've got a lot on their website. And occasionally, they just send you free stuff. Check it out, manscaped.com. Use the code 5RSN for 20% off. Therapistpreferred.com, 25% off. Also, 5RSN. And now, tonight's episode.
Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Bucker said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to 5 on the Floor. I'm your host, Greg Sylvander. Tonight's floor plan with me on the episode is Alex Toledo. Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. And then we also have Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. And he'll have a lot of stuff going up on 5reasonsports.com in written form. So make sure you check out the website, paywall free. The floor plan is essentially this, guys. We finally have a damn opponent. I have to say that I love the play-in week. I love the games. I love the competition. All of that was super dope. I did not like the fact that the Heat, being a 1 seed, had to wait until about 34 to 38 hours before they play that team to now know which team it is. I think that's a little ridiculous. They got to clean that up, tighten it up, NBA. But nevertheless, it is the Hawks Heat round 1-1-8 matchup. I can remember back. I'm not going to take us down memory lane too far. I don't know how old y'all were, but this was around 1994. The Heat played in the NBA playoffs, the Atlanta Hawks, and got their first playoff victory against the Hawks on the road in Atlanta. It was major.
How old were you, Brady?
I think 9 years away from being born. 1994.
94. Okay, so you were 9 years away from being born. Alex, let the listeners know how old you were in 1994.
-2.
-2. Gosh, so neither of y'all were even on the earth. Damn. Well, I was just warming up and starting to really fall in love with the game. The Heat played the Hawks. It was a hotly contested series filled with fighting. Keith Askins, shout out to you, Dwayne Farrell, and a whole bunch of those guys. But no more down memory lane. We have this matchup to talk about. So y'all, Trae Young closed out Cleveland in impressive fashion. I felt like came back in that game. He actually talked about in the post-game interview, which usually those give you absolutely nothing worth talking about, but he talked about slowing down. And I really felt that in that game, the way that Garland looked sped up and Trae Young was just feasting and plotting out where he was going to go and get his shots up. So we have our matchup. Brady, I'm going to start with you because I know that you already are, you got ammunition coming for the website. So I'm going to go to you first here because you've probably got thoughts gathered on just generally Hawks Heat. We're going to hone in on game one later in this episode, but just generally, as now that we know the matchup, your gut reaction when you are kind of looking at the landscape of Heat Hawks.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that this is a really bad defensive team. And I hate to start with like the negatives, but like it just is what it is. Like they're bottom 5 in defensive rating. But when you're watching this play-in game, which I know everybody was, it was a lot of Cleveland, hitting shots. But the reason was because there was not anybody. It was like a double socially distanced because there was about 12 feet distance in between a defender and the Hawks kind of taking that jumper. That Lauri Markkanen got high. I think he was 5 of 8 from 3 the last time I checked it. And I was looking at some numbers where I was like, Duncan Robinson, when was guarding Lauri Markkanen this season, he was like 2 of 9. Like, it's not about the specific defender, but when you have good rotations overall, you can figure out a way to stop it. But that's going too far into Cleveland. It's just that this Miami Heat team can really take advantage of things from the perimeter. They're the number 1 3-point shooting team percentage-wise, which, by the way, Atlanta is 2 right behind them. So that's going to be an interesting matchup that way. But that's kind of where I come down at, that the offense is a lot cleaner in an Atlanta matchup than it would be in a Cleveland matchup. Not that they couldn't create, but I know everybody's just screaming about length, and it's partially true that it kind of mucks things up in a lot of ways in the interior. This opens things up for Jimmy to kind of maybe hunt for Trae, which is the easy thing to say. I think there's easy things to kind of go to and think about with the last time Bam played. I think he had a big game, like that recent game that they were able to kind of double out. He can feed inside to Bam. Possibly no Capella, which is kind of something to keep note of, that after that injury, no John Collins, no Capella is a really weird thing to see, I guess, in that front court that even points to Bam even more. And I guess the defensive stuff, I know one of the things that me and Alex were talking about that Atlantic game is that they're able to kind of be a little bit more flexible defensively against them, because when there's a stretch four, a guy that's not really an interior threat, you can plant a guy like Kyle Lowry on him. And with the one thing we kept talking about that game is they put Kyle Lowry on Gallinari. And what that opened up is that one of the things Miami likes to do best with talented guards like Trae Young is they go to that PJ Tucker, Bam, kind of 1 through 5 pick and roll, where they're going to start with PJ on them. They're going to switch Bam out onto them. But the thing is, are there teams where you can plant Kyle Lowry on that 2, then Duncan sizing up on the 3? No, they're not doing that with Atlanta. It's Kyle Lowry guarding the 4 in this case. So it's just different matchups overall. I think the easy stuff to say is they're obviously going to have to blitz Trae Young a bunch. And it's just kind of that type of stuff. I think Trae Young's going to get to his spots. We know what he can do. He had 37 tonight. He's going to have those type of games. It just is what it is. But the thing for me is that you have to either pick Trae Young's passing or his scoring. Like that's where it comes down to. You're either going to stay home on shooters and say, okay, if Trae Young goes for 35, that's fine, but we are not going to let everybody else beat us. Or you're going to say, okay, we are going to totally blitz out, totally just focus in on Trae Young, making his life miserable, but we're leaving the potential of a backside skip pass from Trae Young for an open shooter. So I feel like it's going to be just kind of a weird balance overall, that'll be the adjustment from Spo throughout.
I'm glad you actually went that direction, because from the last game, because I feel like that's what we're going to take most from what we just most recently saw, where everybody had the dirty pants all of a sudden until the fourth quarter, and the Heat kind of came back at the end there. I want to sneak in a tweet here from a listener of the show, friend of the program, James Alexander. He goes by Scripts by James, at Scripts by James on Twitter. Tyler Hero averaged 20 points, 7.7 assists, and 5.3 rebounds in 3 games against the Hawks. Bam Adebayo averaged 22.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists in 2 games against the Hawks. So that just shows you of the 4 matchups that you only had Tyler for 3, Bam for 2. I expect Jimmy is going to spend some time on Trae, because we saw that in the game when the Heat kind of got down. I felt like is when I started to see that. You guys may know better than me, but Alex, I'm going to actually send you in the direction of where Brady just went. Do you think the Heat are going to push Trae to shoot those 30-footers and do his stuff and shoot his floaters and get his 36, but not get everyone else involved? Or is it going to just be trap, get the ball out of his hands? Like, what do you expect him to be, more of a facilitator, passer? I mean, he gets 30 and 10, so he's going to do both, but which way do you expect the Heat to try to scheme him towards?
It definitely will be a little bit of both, but I definitely also expect it to lean towards kind of what they've been doing all season, as far as being a team that notoriously overhelps. And I think a guy like Trae Young is just such a threat, even though you have a lot of faith in those perimeter defenders, whether it's Kyle, Jimmy, Caleb, Gabe, like they have options to throw at him to kind of just make him work, to throw some resistance at him. But it's going to be tough, man. And just kind of doing some homework leading up to this show on the Hawks. Like, just one thing, they had a defensive rating of 111.3 in the playoffs last season, which would have been a top 10 defense last season and would be 13th this season. So not that, you take that and put it out over a whole season. That doesn't mean that they would have done that over a whole season, but just to point out that they stepped up their game defensively last season, even though, they had a pretty easy run, I would say. But in all seriousness, like, I think this is going to be a pretty good series only because of Trae. Like, even though I might just end up saying Heat in 5, I think Trae is going to keep them in a lot of these games, like, even if it ends up in Heat in 5. So the Hawks, Brady already pointed out that they're second as far as 3-point percentage behind the Heat. And it's just so funny looking at some of their stats, how black and white their whole game is, because they are in the top 3 in shooting from the rim. I mean, I'm sorry, not top 3, top 10 in shooting from at the rim, from mid-range, and from 3. And then are in the bottom 10 in the same percentages, allowing the highest, the bottom 10 percentages on defense. So like they're all offense, no defense. And you saw it tonight. Like I think the biggest difference between Trae and Garland, even though Trae is I think a better player and better at what he does than Garland, is Garland will give you a little bit more defensive intensity and physicality there. But the real difference is that when you send all your defense at Trae, other guys can make you pay. The Cavs don't have those guys to make you pay. And I was saying that throughout the season, this is what happens when you put the Cavs and the Hawks in a 1-game sample, right? Like you have the opportunity for Trae to go off for a stretch, and that stretch is what killed the Cavs.
So it's interesting that you bring up the 3-point shooting, because I hope the Heat don't lean into that direction and try to get into a shootout with this team, because they can't defend them. So all you got to do is tighten the screws on defense. Don't worry about getting in a shootout, and this team will go away fast. I just checked Prize Picks to see if the Heat props were up, and they're not yet. But you have 19 hours from the time that I'm recording this. It's currently 10:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You still have 19 hours to take advantage of this promotion on Prize Picks, y'all. So this is Joel Embiid. They have given him a 98% discount on his player prop bet for points. It is at 0.5 instead of 33.5. So that's an easy square that you're going to immediately get. You'll get that pick. You just need to get a couple more and you could get a winning ticket. Go to prizepicks.com, download the app, use the code 5. That's going to get your initial deposit matched up to $100. Use that code 5, F-I-V-E. You can play all the games for the playoffs. The Heat player props will be up now that the matchup is set. You can take advantage of these cool promos like Joel Embiid with the points being so low, automatically gets you a correct pick. So all you can do is get one other correct pick and you already have a winning ticket. So this is cool stuff. Very intuitive to use the app. Daily fantasy made easy. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E at Prize Picks. Check it out at prizepicks.com. All right, y'all. So let's, I don't want to go too laser focused into game one. I guess because there's just not a ton that it's going to be much different than the rest of the series, I don't really think. But there is the one element, and Brady alluded to it earlier. I don't know what's going to be up with Capella. If this was a situation where they're being very careful and they held him out, or if he's actually got some sort of injury that would keep him out a week or two, you know what I mean? Because that would really impact the series. Alex, I'll kick it off with you here. What are you expecting from the Heat in game one that maybe we haven't seen? I guess there's a part of me that feels like there's not too much of an element of surprise with this team. And now with Capella out, you kind of even know more what you need to do. And he has less options. So I'm interested for your perspective on the tight turnaround, just how you feel the Heat come out against Atlanta in game one.
I think this is an easy win for them. I think this game went wire to wire, and the Hawks didn't even have to worry about many offensive threats on the other side there. So I think despite Trae going off, despite all of that, the Hawks defense wasn't even really tested and really taken advantage of. And I think, having to fly now tonight and getting basically 1 day to prepare for this Heat team that's really good and, probably need more time to prepare for, I don't think it's going to go over well for them. I have a feeling Capella is not going to play in game one. I don't know. That's just kind of the way I'm feeling right now. That didn't look great. And I think that absolutely, plays into Miami's hand because they're already missing John Collins. So now they're down 2 big front court players for them. It's a whole lot of rotation minutes in the front court there. And although I like Onyeka Okongwu, his role is just huge now. There's no margin for error because they don't have many bigs outside of him now. They're probably going to be more Gallinari big minutes, which is good for the Heat, of course. So I just think game one is going to be a win. And then from there, that's kind of going to set the tone for the rest of the series.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. And I mean, if they don't have Capella and Collins, I just they start to really run out of options. Brady, I know you've been around
switch against too.
That's true. That's true. It does simplify a lot of stuff because there's just it'd be interesting to see what they do with their bigs, how high they bring up say his last name again. Okongwu. Is that how am I saying it correctly?
Okongwu, yeah.
Cool. Okongwu. I'll get that right about game 4. So Brady, you were around the team a bit this week. I know you checked in at practice. Ethan did as well. I'm interested as you kind of caught the vibe from the team. I've got the feeling that this group is like getting locked in, like not stupidly locked in. I don't want to talk like that, like last year, but I have good feelings about the way that this team is prepared for this week, the rest that they've gotten. I checked in with a couple folks and heard good things in terms of where the headspace element was with the team. So you that was there, that actually got a pulse on the team, how did you feel that they looked heading into the weekend? And what are your expectations for game 1?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing just from practice is that it looks like they just want to play basketball again. Like this is a group of guys that we talk about, the Heat culture stuff and all that type of stuff, but they just want to play competitive basketball. Like PJ Tucker, people were like, okay, is he going to be ready for game 1? He was out there today, like in a full out one-on-one session with guys like Jimmy and UD. And it looked like it was game 7 of the finals. Like that's just like the way that he is. Like he seems like one of the most competitive guys that a lot of these guys just seem like they just want to play competitively out there. And then I think one game after you kind of get that first game, like guys like Max who have not really played on this stage to this degree, or maybe Caleb or if Gabe slips in there, that first game I think is important, just trying to get a certain type of feel under them. But in terms of game 1, you guys were talking about the bigs. I feel like that is the biggest thing about this. And even in general, let's just start with Gallinari, who subbed in for John Collins. Something Miami did a ton in that last game they played him is we talk about hunting Trae. It felt like they were hunting Gallinari even more. Like they want to draw him out, try to stretch him out as far as possible and try to break him down. Tyler was doing it a ton. And the weird thing about Tyler is he's not the same type of player that when he draws a big out, it's okay, I want to burst by him. Tyler does this weird thing where if he draws a big out, he knows he can just rise over the top of him and he just ends up shooting a 3. So I think there's advantages there. Okongwu kind of going in for Capella changes things, but there's still this element. Okay, Okongwu goes in for Capella. Who's their backup big? Is it Gorgie Jang? I guess like there's still going to be this element of there's a drop big that's going to be playing back a lot of the time when they're not hunting switches. Like are Duncan Robinson's minutes going to be mirrored with Gorgie Jang? Because that's a win for Miami if you think about it just from there. That the way that Duncan Robinson's been looked at over time, that now he's going to be playing off the bench in those type of minutes, I think that could be just big overall. But you mentioned, I guess, trying to slow it down and not getting in a shootout. I don't know why, but for some reason I picture it just being a Miami Heat shootout. Like I just really do. And it's just because I'm watching this game tonight, just seeing how poor of rotations this at Hawks defense. Like I know I said this before, but they're really bad. Like it's a really bad rotation defensive group that Miami is when Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler have the ball in their hands, for Jimmy drawing 2 to 3 guys in when he's driving to the basket, Kyle just knowing kind of where that help defender is at all times. It's going to be on guys like Max and Duncan or PJ in the corner, maybe the Caleb relief 3 to kind of set them apart in these games. Like those are the runs that they need. Like I think they know the certain things they can do offensively. They know what Jimmy can provide. They know the switches he can get. They know that Bam, I guess, in a lot of these matchups can dominate down low if they need him to. But the shooting is the part where, okay, this is, a pretty decently easy first round if you kind of play your cards right. And I think the cards is that the shooting kind of needs to be played. And I think it revolves, as we were kind of just saying, it revolves around the front court in Atlanta.
So I'm glad this episode is trending in the perfect direction because you named off a lot of the role guys, and I want to get into that a little bit after the break here as we close, just kind of to close the loop on some guys that maybe we're not thinking about that are going to be impactful this series. And I also want to clarify something before we go to break. Last year, Tyler Hero and the Miami Heat were eliminated and the Atlanta Hawks had their little Cinderella run, and there were heads out there that scoffed at the notion that I said Tyler Hero would have a better career than Kevin Herter. And just watch what takes place in this damn series, you assholes who said that out on Twitter, that the Hawks and Kevin Herter and they were going to go on this run, and they had this team of young upside. We're about to see what that looks like in a moment. But before we watch that disaster that happens to the Atlanta Hawks via the Miami Heat, are you a South Florida property owner with an insurance claim? Are you dealing with water, mold, fire damage? Any kind of disaster, you need a reputable, fully licensed, insured, and certified contractor. Water Cleanup of Florida is for you 24 hours a day. When a disaster strikes in your home or business, you need specialized, fast, and reliable services. Water Cleanup of Florida understands the impact and stress an unexpected disaster may cause. With over 60 years of combined experience, Michael, Robert, the whole team over there is prepared to handle any size disaster. The guys are third-generation contractors in South Florida. They continue to maintain a sterling reputation throughout the area. It's extremely important to them. Their objective is to make the cleanup insurance claim process painless and hassle-free as possible. Water Cleanup of Florida is also a licensed budgeting or building contractor, so they provide A to Z one-stop shop service for busy homeowners and business owners. We know you require that. You can't think about that kind of stuff. Go to Water Cleanup of Florida. Call Michael anytime on his personal cell, 954-579-0356. Again, that's 954-579-0356. Also check out watercleanupflorida.com. If you got the schmutz, they got the guts. Okay, so as we close here, you talked about the other guys and that this could be an offensive series. So from each of you, Alex, I'll let you tee it up. Player on the Heat we're not talking about that will come up big. Player on the Hawks that nobody's ever heard of before that we should worry about. So the random scrub Heat killer of the series. We need that from you now. And your pick.
So when you say pick, do you mean my pick for the series?
Oh yeah, because we only have this is the only show that we're going to do before the series kicks off. So this is where we all go on record with our picks.
All right. So you said 3 different questions there, so I'm going to try to keep up. But the first one was random scrub Heat killer. That's actually a tough one because I think fans are going to recognize a lot of these names, not only because the Hawks are a division rival and it feels like the Heat play them 25 times a season. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but it feels like I've watched Trae Young way more than I've watched other guys go up against the Heat and kind of the Hornets too, but that's a different conversation. But because of that, I think Bogdanovich, Herter, those are the types of guys that have killed the Heat in the past. And so those guys are going to do it again because that's what happens with the Heat. Unless they change it up, Brady alluded to earlier, if they just decide to be more about staying home on shooters on defense, then maybe it won't be that much of a random scrub Heat killer series. But the team that they've been all season is one where opposing shooting guards will go off every now and then, maybe a little bit more often than they will against other teams, just because of how many threes the Heat allow. Again, they allow the most in the league. I think a whole percentage point and a half ahead of second place, which is the Bucks, who are known for doing that. So yeah, the Heat are going to allow a lot of threes. The Hawks have a lot of shooters, right? And I think so there's not one guy, but I do want to shout out Nate McMillan and some of these other Hawks players that aren't really talked about because he was kind of messing around with some of those lineups in this Cavs game and throwing in defenders when need be and doing a lot of that offense-defense stuff. And I'm like, okay, so when the Hawks want to defend a little better, they can throw in DeLon Wright, DeAndre Hunter. They're going to have Okongwu. That's already 3 guys you feel good about. They're obviously going to have Trae out there. And then one of the aforementioned white guys, I think they're gonna be able to really mix it up a little bit and maybe have a little bit more offense defense balance that I'm giving them credit for. Other than that, Heat in 5.
Brady, let me go through the questions. And I just realized, see, that's why Ethan's better at doing this than I am, because I threw Alex an avalanche of questions as if he was going to just catalog all that and have it ready to spew back at me. I apologize, Alex. That was not good host setup by me. So I'm going to go slower on this one. Role player from the Heat that we're not talking about that you think is going to come up big in this series? And Alex, you didn't get a chance to answer that, so you can hop back in here. But Brady, first on just that question.
I would think the one name is Caleb Martin for me. And it's funny because Spo said the other day at practice, I guess, that the rotation at the end of the season is the rotation heading into the playoffs. And I've seen this thing where there's this idea where they kind of take in the 9 guys that ended the season. And even though Caleb was plugged in for PJ, they basically eliminated Caleb from that 9 group. I don't think that's what he meant by that. Like, I think Gabe is the filler there. Maybe there's some potential if Wright's playing in this series, but I still think Caleb is the lock for what they want to do. And PJ will sub back in. But Caleb is the role player for me. And the reason is some of the stuff I was saying earlier, like when you're planting a guy like Lowry on Gallinari, the thing that Caleb Martin did really well in that Atlanta game, even though Trae Young did his thing, I think he was like 9 of 11 in that first half. Like he was playing really well. But Caleb Martin was making things really tough for him, like making him give the ball up. That type of stuff is what they need in this series. That I think you're going to see a ton of Caleb Martin minutes on Trae Young. That's the stuff that seems important. There's going to be a lot of PJ Tucker on him. There's going to be a lot of Caleb on him. We mentioned there's going to be a lot of Pam on him. We mentioned there's going to be a lot of Jimmy on him. That means they have a lot of options to throw at Trae Young, and that's what I think makes you feel a lot more comfortable this season than maybe previous seasons that we talked about when there's one single guy you have to throw at somebody. So I do think it's Caleb Martin. I do think he's in the rotation. And I know we keep having these rotation talks, but I feel like at this very moment, like I think we know pretty much who the 9 are heading in.
I agree with you. Caleb subbed in for Gabe. Because like there was a part of me that was going to say, well, wait, if we need a guard to chase around Trae, you're going to play Gabe. But no, I'd rather have Caleb chase his ass around anyway. So here we go. Like this is much more seamless setup. Alex, your player that we haven't talked about on the Heat, just quickly get it in here that we may see pop off in this series that maybe we weren't thinking was going to have a big impact.
So it's hard to go in a different route than what you guys are saying. I think Caleb is going to shine in this series. He's gonna get a lot of playing time off the bench. But since you guys already gave those 2 and you asked me to name somebody who we haven't talked about, I'm going to go Dedmon here. And I thought I was kind of thinking like maybe this is a series where Dedmon isn't on the floor too much, specifically when Trae is on the floor. Maybe you just make sure to not have Dedmon on the floor. And I would say that for Max too, maybe for Duncan, just just be careful when Trae Young is on the floor, who you're putting out there. But I think because of what we talked about earlier in the show, now that they're missing Capella and Collins, like there's just not that much when it comes to when it comes in the way of size there. Like I think Dedmon just out muscles Gorgie Jang by like 50 pounds. So I think he's looking at that like food. It's also his former team, so he knows how Trae and them play a little bit. He recognizes a lot of these guys. Again, he played the Hawks 50 times a season. So I think this is one where Dedmon can look pretty good for 2 games.
I'm with you on that. I think that you would intuitively say, oh, they're going to size down because they're going to want to get smaller. But the Hawks don't have any ability to size any further down than what they were already going to have out there. So I think Dedmon will have opportunity. Brady, random scrub Heat killer on the Atlanta Hawks side that you're worried about and your pick for the series.
Yeah, I don't know if we could say random scrub Heat killer because I don't think there'll be any scrubs playing in the playoff series. So like that's where I have trouble because like when I'm naming, like looking at guys like Bogdanovich or Huerter, like I don't know if I could categorize them as that. But I think I'll say, because Alex mentioned the other ones, I think I'll say Hunter just because he hasn't played that well against Miami. Like I was looking, I think the last game, there were times where he had open shots and he ended up with 2 points. Like that's the guy that I think can swing things for him a little bit just because if we're talking about Trae Young collapsing, or let's just say with what we were just talking about, Dedmon's that drop big. Now you have to kind of slide in on that corner, and Trae Young makes that skip pass out to that weak side corner, and there's DeAndre Hunter. That's the guy who kind of changes things because then if you have to stay home on him, now Trae Young's doing his thing with that floater inside. So I think just with what Miami needs to do defensively, I'd say maybe he's the guy to kind of keep an eye on. And I want to disagree and go in a different route with my pick, but I think it is Heat in 5. Like I think Trae Young, I said before he's good enough to give you 1 or 2 games, but the fact that the defense for me, after just continuing to see this defense, it deducted a game for me that I have to stay. I think it's Heat in 5.
Yeah, you talk about deducting a game. I think Ethan is on record. He's not on the show tonight, so feel free, Ethan, to change your pick. But I believe he was saying that the Hawks could get 2 games for Miami, and it would be Heat in 6.
I think if they were healthy, I might have said Heat in 6.
So I feel strongly that they're good enough to sweep this Hawks team, but just one of those Atlanta home games, Trae Young will get hot and things will be weird, and it'll probably be a week from this coming Sunday, that first game in Atlanta, something like that. But it'll be Heat in 5.
No shot the Heat blow one of these home games, huh? I'm asking you.
No, I wouldn't be shocked necessarily, because it would be a great lever for the universe to pull to make Heat fans get really, really scared about going on the road to Atlanta. Just
Also,
spare
Raptors
me that
fans,
crap.
Raptors fans have given the Heat fans a disclaimer that Kyle Lowry apparently is bad in afternoon Sunday games. I don't know that. I mean, I guess Raptors fans are obsessive about Kyle Lowry, so of course they know that, but apparently that's a thing. Also, we know that I think the Raptors were also like, did they win every game 1, or was it they lost every game 1? I don't remember which one it was. You remember that when that was?
Well, none of that Raptors shit follows Kyle Lowry to the cultured environment that is.
I'm just saying, if Lowry comes out flat on Sunday, Raptors fans warned us. So that's just something I'm putting out there just to inform the people.
Okay, so thanks for the surprise, Gianni Navas.
He's going up against Trae, so I think he'll be fine.
Appearance on the show. I'm gonna really be annoyed with Kevin Huerter by the end of this thing. I think DeAndre Hunter's an interesting one that you mentioned, but I think Bogdanovich has the opportunity in this series to shake loose enough to be the player that gives the most headaches. I won't say random scrub Heat killer, Brady. You're right. There's very little scrubs out there. If they're playing the Sixers, I got a scrub to point at, but not if they're playing the Hawks. We can keep it chill. And yeah, Heat in 5 is where I'm going. And the role player that I think is going to have a damn good series is Duncan Robinson. I really do. I think that this sets up perfectly for him to not get, I don't know, if he gets hot in game 1, I could see him carving himself out a role for these 5 games and then maybe not playing in the next round. Any final thoughts from you gentlemen before we close this episode down?
So how are you feeling, man? How are you feeling now that they finally know who they got? Because I feel like you've been trying to set us up, so I want to throw you the lob now to really get into your whole Leif thing. And just how are you feeling now that the Heat are starting off this path? You know, they karmically avoided the teams they wanted to avoid, but doing it in the gutsy fashion, everything that you stand by. And now we're setting up for game 1 on Sunday against the Hawks, probably the Sixers in the second round. How are you feeling, man?
Wow. You just completely flipped it on me. I didn't realize that was heading in this direction. So
I'm trying to give you your shine.
No, I appreciate that. Cause usually I do get some different usage. I'm used differently on the team when Ethan is playing point guard and I'm not.
Exactly.
No, I feel you. So I appreciate that. I'll guess I'll say this. Heading into these playoffs, I am as quietly confident as I've ever been. Kind of like how it felt with the big 3 in certain respects, in terms of like, even if this team gets punched in the mouth, I know that they're not done. And I like that about a group heading into the playoffs. And I think you can count on that from this team. I am as confident as I've ever been in a group heading into a playoff. So if they fall flat, I will be really surprised by it, but also, that's going to suck because like straight up, like I think this team has all of the elements and they are clicking in certain ways and everyone is healthy, knock on wood, that we can really make a long playoff run. So like this is one of those groups where there's been some playoffs where we started out like when the Justice Winslow Philly series, you didn't know if they were really going to win that series, or even like the run where Justice played 5 and they played, Toronto tough on the road throughout that series that they could have won. Like you weren't expecting necessarily to get that far. I don't think. I mean, maybe I was talking that shit, but not everyone was. This is a different kind of group. This is a group that's poised and And I think that they realize that if this team doesn't do it in these circumstances, it's going to be hard for this group as presently constructed to do it. So that's going to be a little added juice in the tough moments throughout the playoffs. So I'm excited for game 1. 1 o'clock Eastern is the tip in.
All right, that was the episode with the preview of this series, Miami Heat facing the Atlanta Hawks. We have the starting 5. The game's about to start. The presentations are going on right now. The Miami Heat are rolling out with their starting 5 with Bam Adebayo, PJ Tucker, Kyle Lowry, Max Strus, and Jimmy Butler, of course. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to start the other broadcast with the Hangout, so you guys can join us here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel, but in another broadcast that we're going to create right away as the game's about to start. Have a good night. Have a good day. I'm sorry. And we'll see you on the other broadcast. Join us so we can hang out and talk about what's going on during the game. Bye-bye. See you.